$2.7 billion. Two submarines. That is what Sweden is spending on the most advanced conventional submarine program in the world. $2.7 billion. For two vessels that can do something a $3 billion American nuclear submarine cannot do at all. Disappear into the Baltic Sea for 45 days and become effectively undetectable in the one body of water that will determine whether NATO's eastern flank holds or breaks in a European conflict. This is the economics of the A26, the Blekinge-class, the world's first fifth-generation submarine, and the number deserves to sit in your mind for a moment before we go further. Because the conventional wisdom about naval power has always been that nuclear means superior. Nuclear means deeper. Nuclear means longer range and more endurance. Nuclear means the apex of undersea warfare. And that is true in the open ocean, in the deep Atlantic, in the vast Pacific, where water depth gives nuclear submarines the operational freedom their size demands. But the Baltic Sea is not the open ocean. The Baltic is 55 meters deep on average. It is cluttered, shallow, acoustically treacherous, and partially frozen in winter. And in that environment, the $2.7 billion Swedish submarine is more dangerous than anything nuclear that the United States, the United Kingdom, or France could send to replace it. Russia knows the Baltic. Russia has spent decades building a Baltic naval doctrine around the assumption that it understands these waters better than any NATO nation, that its submarines can exploit the acoustic complexity, the shallow bottom, the stratified water column, in ways that NATO's deep ocean equipment cannot match, that the Baltic beneath the surface belongs to Russia. The A26 was built to prove that assumption wrong, and the proof is already written in the record of what Sweden's previous submarine generation did to the most heavily defended ship in the United States Navy. In this video, we are going to look at exactly how undersea warfare has transformed from a straightforward contest of submarines hunting submarines into a multi-domain battlefield stretching from the ocean surface to the seabed floor, why the Baltic Sea is now the most contested and consequential underwater space in Europe, how Sweden spent 20 years absorbing the lessons of a moment that humiliated American anti-submarine warfare doctrine and channeled them into the most capable conventional submarine ever designed, and what the A26's combination of ghost stealth, 45-day endurance, seabed warfare capability, and modular weapons architecture means for a Russian naval strategy that was built for a Baltic that no longer exists. But first, let us talk about what underwater warfare actually looks like in 2026. Because the mission the A26 is built for extends far beyond anything the previous generation of submarines was designed to do. The seabed is a battlefield. This is not a metaphor. It is a statement about where the next war's most critical infrastructure sits, and where the next war's most decisive covert operations will take place. The Baltic floor carries the undersea cables and pipelines that connect NATO's northeastern members to the rest of the alliance. Communications cables, energy pipelines, data infrastructure that, if severed, isolates Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania from Allied command networks at the moment they are most needed. Russia has already demonstrated, through its hybrid warfare operations across Europe, that it understands the strategic value of this infrastructure and is willing to act against it. Suspected Russian vessels have been caught loitering over cable routes. Submarine operations have been tracked near pipeline infrastructure. The tools of seabed warfare, the ships, the submarines, the specialized underwater vehicles, have been deployed in exactly the ways that suggest a systematic mapping of NATO's undersea vulnerabilities. A conventional submarine cannot adequately address this threat. A submarine designed for torpedo warfare and anti-ship operations can detect another submarine and shoot at surface vessels. It cannot deploy specialized autonomous underwater vehicles to patrol cable routes. It cannot insert combat divers to inspect suspicious contacts on the seabed. It cannot hold position on the bottom for days while running passive surveillance on Russian vessels moving overhead. The mission set of undersea warfare has expanded beyond what previous submarine generations were architected to handle. At the same time, drone swarms have transformed the threat environment above the surface. Russia has deployed drone swarms against Ukrainian ground and naval targets at scales that saturate conventional point defense. The same logic that makes drone swarms dangerous against surface vessels, cheap, numerous, capable of overwhelming finite interceptor magazines, applies to the underwater domain. where unmanned underwater vehicles can conduct reconnaissance, lay mines, and potentially attack undersea infrastructure at costs far below any manned alternative. Defending against this threat requires not just a submarine that can shoot torpedoes, but a platform that can deploy its own unmanned systems, command them from the seabed, and recover them without surfacing. The information warfare dimension adds a third layer. Modern naval operations are won or lost on the quality and speed of the intelligence picture. A submarine that can intercept and classify every radar emission and communication signal within range, passively, without transmitting anything that reveals its position, is not just a weapons platform. It is a sensor node in a networked warfare architecture that multiplies the value of every asset connected to it. The submarine that can see without being seen, listen without speaking, and pass what it learns directly into the Allied command network in real time is worth more than the sum of the torpedoes it carries. This is the operational environment the A26 was designed for, not the Cold War Baltic, where submarines hunted each other with sonar and traded torpedo solutions in deep water. The 21st century Baltic, where the contest runs from the surface to the seabed, across the electromagnetic spectrum, through the information networks that connect Allied command structures, and into the covert operations that shape the strategic environment before the shooting starts. Russia has not fully adapted its Baltic doctrine to this environment. The A26 has been designed specifically for it, until now. To earn the right to be called the world's first fifth-generation submarine, you need a lineage that proves the capability is real and not theoretical. Sweden has that lineage, and the proof of it is a moment that the United States Navy has spent 20 years not fully forgetting. 2005. A Pacific naval exercise. Sweden deploys a Gotland-class diesel-electric submarine against a United States carrier strike group built around the USS Ronald Reagan, a Nimitz-class nuclear carrier surrounded by destroyers, cruisers, helicopters, maritime patrol aircraft, and the full-layered anti-submarine warfare architecture that American naval doctrine had refined over decades of Cold War competition. The Swedish submarine finds the carrier, fires. The carrier is sunk in the exercise accounting. The carrier finds nothing. The submarine repositions. Finds the carrier again, fires again, sunk again. This sequence repeats throughout the exercise. The American assets employing every detection tool available never achieve a firing solution against the submarine. The submarine achieves firing solutions against the carrier at will. The American response is to lease the Gotland and its crew for 2 years and study the problem. The conclusion reached at the end of those 2 years is that diesel-electric submarines operating in shallow, acoustically complex water present a detection challenge that the American Navy's deep ocean anti-submarine warfare toolkit was not built to solve. The Gotland is not a better submarine than the Virginia-class in the open Pacific. It is a submarine optimized for an environment where the Virginia-class's advantages, depth, speed, endurance at range, do not apply, and where its disadvantages, size, acoustic signature in shallow water, operational constraints, become acute. Saab acquires the shipyard that built the Gotland in 2014, specifically to continue the development program that became the A26. The Gotland submarines go through a comprehensive midlife upgrade program that serves as a technology testbed for A26 systems. By the time the first A26 section is laid at Karlskrona, Sweden is not iterating on what defeated the Reagan. It is building something categorically beyond it. The A26 is constructed in 5 modular sections built simultaneously and assembled into a completed hull. 600,000 individual components, 62 miles of cable, 10,000 unique pipes and conduits, 140 separate integrated systems. The construction complexity rivals anything in the history of diesel-electric submarine building, and it is being executed by a shipyard workforce of around 900 people, in a country whose entire military budget is a fraction of a single American carrier strike group's annual operating cost. What they are building contains a stealth system so comprehensive that Saab names it like a weapon. Ghost. Genuine holistic stealth. Ghost is the answer to the question every adversary anti-submarine warfare operator asks: how do you find a submarine? And the answer Ghost gives is, you find a submarine by detecting its signatures, acoustic, magnetic, electromagnetic, radar, thermal, visual. Ghost eliminates, suppresses, or deceives every one of those detection vectors simultaneously. The acoustic signature is the most important. Sound is how submarines are found. The A26 attacks acoustic signature at every source. The hull carries no external tanks. A structural choice that eliminates a major source of flow turbulence noise at operating speed. Every piece of machinery aboard sits on rubberized isolation mounts that decouple mechanical vibration from the pressure hull before that vibration can propagate as sound into the surrounding water. Anechoic tiles on the outer surface absorb active sonar returns. The teardrop hull cross-section minimizes hydrodynamic noise. The result is a submarine whose self-noise, at operating speeds and depths, sits among the lowest figures measured for any non-nuclear vessel. But the acoustic suppression built into the hull is only effective if the propulsion system running inside it is equally quiet. And this is where the A26 makes its most decisive departure from every diesel-electric submarine that preceded it. The Stirling Air Independent Propulsion System. 3 Kockums Stirling engines, each producing around 75 kilowatts of mechanical power, for a combined output of 225 kilowatts of continuous, silent, atmospheric independent propulsion. The Stirling engine burns diesel fuel with liquid oxygen stored in onboard tanks in a sealed, continuously running combustion cycle. No atmospheric intake, no exhaust. Combustion that never starts and stops, that runs as a continuous process, produces a fraction of the vibration of any conventional diesel engine cycle. The acoustic signature of the Stirling engine running at depth is not merely quiet. It approaches the acoustic profile of the surrounding water itself. The operational consequence of this is what separates the A26 from every diesel-electric submarine that came before the Stirling generation. Conventional diesel-electric submarines must snorkel to recharge their batteries. Snorkeling means raising a mast above the surface. The raised mast creates a radar return. The running diesel creates noise. The exhaust is detectable by airborne sensors. The snorkel event is the moment of maximum vulnerability. The moment every anti-submarine warfare platform is hunting for, because it is the moment the submarine must announce its general position to anyone watching carefully enough. Anti-submarine warfare doctrine against diesel-electric submarines is built substantially around predicting and exploiting the snorkel cycle. The Stirling AIP system breaks that doctrine at its foundation. The A26 does not need to snorkel for extended periods. It generates its own power in a sealed cycle, using stored liquid oxygen, and it does so silently enough that the background acoustic environment of the Baltic Sea provides more masking than the A26 itself requires. The submarine disappears, completely, for 45 days. 18 of those days run entirely on Stirling AIP power before battery reserves need supplementing. The full submersion envelope reaches 45 days on a combined AIP and battery cycling profile. The A26 leaves port and does not surface until its mission is complete, or its provisions require resupply. Russia knows it is out there. Russia cannot find it. Now let us look at what the A26 does during those 45 invisible days, because the endurance and stealth are not the capability. They are the conditions that make the capability possible. The sensor suite is the first layer of active use. Bow arrays and flank sonar arrays operating at low to mid frequencies, tuned for the Baltic's specific acoustic environment. High-frequency intercept sonar for shallow water contact detection. Mine avoidance sonar that allows the A26 to navigate heavily mined approaches without surfacing. Electronic support measures that passively intercept and classify every radar emission and communication signal within range, building a precise picture of Russian surface movements, radar coverage patterns, and communication links without transmitting a single detectable signal. Non-penetrating optronic masts that allow surface surveillance at periscope depth without the radar cross-section of a traditional periscope. All of this sensor data feeds into the 9LV Combat Management System, the AI-assisted fusion platform that merges acoustic contacts with electronic emissions, cross-references optronic observations with sonar tracks, and presents the crew with a unified real-time tactical picture of everything within detection range. The AI layer accelerates classification and correlation, allowing a crew of 25 to process and act on sensor volumes that would overwhelm a conventional manual system. And the picture is shared, directly in real time, into NATO's network-centric operations architecture. What the A26 sees, the alliance sees. The intelligence product of one invisible submarine becomes an asset for every allied commander with network access. The seabed warfare capability gives the A26 a dimension that no previous diesel-electric submarine has offered at this level. The hull is pressure-rated and shock-resistant, reinforced specifically for operations in mined environments. The X-rudder stern configuration, 4 independently controlled surfaces providing fine-grained low-speed maneuverability, allows the A26 to position precisely on the Baltic floor and hold station in currents and tidal variations. Sitting on the seabed, it is acoustically indistinguishable from the surrounding sediment. It does not move. It does not transmit. It watches and listens for days at a time, monitoring a cable route, a maritime choke point, a Russian naval transit corridor. From that same seabed position, through the multi-mission portal, it deploys a dedicated lockout chamber, not a retrofit, not an adaptation of an existing design, but a central architectural element built into the hull from the keel up, allows the launch and recovery of unmanned underwater vehicles and the insertion and extraction of up to 8 Special Forces divers with full equipment. The UUVs can extend the A26's sensor reach far beyond its own hull, patrol infrastructure routes, inspect suspicious seabed contacts, or conduct operations that classified mission requirements define and open sources cannot describe. The divers can reach targets that no manned surface or aerial asset could approach without detection. And the A26 does all of this without surfacing, without snorkeling, without changing any externally observable signature. The weapons complete the picture. 4 533mm torpedo tubes carrying heavy torpedoes with ranges exceeding 25 miles. 2 400mm tubes for lighter, shorter range engagements. A total weapons load of approximately 20 units in modular configurations optimized for each specific mission. Anti-ship, anti-submarine. Mine-laying for area denial operations that can close Baltic transit routes to Russian surface vessels without committing any NATO surface force to the task. And built into the hull architecture, the pathway for vertical launch system integration, up to 18 cells for land attack and anti-ship cruise missiles, including adapted long-range variants. The A26 entering service in 2027 is not finished. It is a foundation. Every capability that 5th-generation submarine design makes possible, and every future weapon system that modular architecture can accommodate, flows into this hull on an upgrade path that extends the A26's relevance across decades of service without the cost of a new design. The cost exchange argument deserves its moment because it is the argument that most completely dismantles Russian confidence in its Baltic posture. Russia's Baltic naval capability costs billions to maintain. Anti-submarine warfare aircraft, surface ASW vessels, passive sonar array networks, the accumulated infrastructure of a doctrine built on knowing where NATO's submarines are. All of that investment is premised on the ability to find what it is hunting. Against a sterling AIP submarine with ghost technology operating in Baltic acoustic conditions, that investment yields diminishing returns. The Baltic's shallow water and complex acoustics that Russia has spent decades learning to exploit are the same conditions in which ghost is most effective. The environment that Russia mastered for offense is the environment Sweden designed the A26 to use for concealment. Every hour Russia's anti-submarine warfare assets spend searching for an A26 that cannot be found is an hour those assets are not available for anything else. Every ruble diverted to Baltic ASW patrols is a ruble not available for Ukraine. Every operational plan that must now account for an unknown submarine in an unknown position adds planning complexity and decision-making friction that compounds across every mission Russia attempts in the Baltic theater. The A26 imposes cost through presence, not through action. It does not need to fire a torpedo to degrade Russian operational confidence. It needs only to be somewhere in the Baltic, undetected, with Russia knowing it is there. $2.7 billion for 2 submarines that do what no nuclear vessel can do in the environment that matters most. That is the cost exchange ratio that Sweden has achieved, not by spending more than Russia, not by matching Russian nuclear capability, but by building a conventional submarine so precisely matched to its operational environment that the environment itself becomes a force multiplier. Russia built its Baltic undersea strategy for a Sweden that operated capable but bounded diesel-electric submarines in a non-aligned posture. That Sweden is now inside NATO, building the most advanced conventional submarine in the world, with a track record that includes silently sinking an American carrier strike group's flagship in the Pacific. The A26 has not yet entered service. Russia already cannot answer the question it will pose. The Baltic belongs to whoever can disappear into it completely. The A26 disappears better than anything Russia has built to find it. If you found value in this, subscribe so you do not miss what comes next.